Okay.
Okay, so today we are going to cover both the buyer and the listing side of residential sales. Um, and we have trainings available for leasing as well as new construction training, but we're primarily just going to focus on resale here. So first on the buyer side is what we're going to cover with showings. I always like to start with safety first because y'all's safety is paramount here. Whenever you're going to show a home, always announce yourself, whether it's, knocking on the door, ringing the doorbell, saying hello whenever you walk in, even if it's a vacant home. You want to make sure people are aware that you are entering the premises because there could be a dog that's on the loose or someone who's in the bathroom and they get startled. There's people forget that they scheduled a showing all the time. So just, you want to make sure that you're announcing yourself so that everyone is safe and there aren't any accidental, issues that come from that. Don't put yourself in unsafe situations. And what I mean by this is this relates to your clients. So, as a real estate agent, you can get kind of narrowly focused in on getting deals and closing transactions, and you may get a lead that comes in from some source and you don't know this person and they kind of give you the heebie-jeebies whenever you meet them. Or maybe you're talking to them on the phone. Don't go walking into a vacant home if something doesn't feel right. If if your intuition is telling you that this is not a safe situation, don't take a chance. There's no commission that's worth it. Just say, you know what, something's actually just come up. I'm going to need to reschedule, and you get the heck out of there. So don't, I don't want any Dateline stories about any agents that are sponsored by me. That's what this really is stemmed from. I've heard plenty of stories where, the realtor goes into an empty house with somebody and they had signs before, but they went into it anyways and they never came out. So just always, if your gut is telling you that this is not a good position to be in, then get the heck out of there. Another thing is, don't go, what I always do, and um I do think about this whenever I'm showing homes, is I try to keep my clients within my vision. Okay, I don't go walking into a dark home in front of them. I usually will open the door. Actually, most of the time I'll appear early. I'll unlock the door and I'll even crack it. And I let them go into the home first so that they're always in front of me. I can kind of keep an eye on what's going on, what they're doing, and see if anything doesn't seem right. Um, but that's just the nature of how I deal with it. And I would encourage you to do something similar. Don't ever let clients just go roaming freely in houses without any type of supervision, but also make sure you are in a safe position always. Um, get approval for every showing. Don't just show up. I've had calls from people, other realtors, where a realtor just felt like, hey, I've got a super key. I'm just going to go unlock this house that's across the street from my showing because they've got a super box on there, and they go walking in on somebody else's home while they're there. And it's really bad. So all showings have to be approved. If you do not get approval for a showing, then don't go into the house. This is not something we're authorized to do, and you could get into some serious trouble. If you're going to be driving clients around in your vehicle, make sure you have good insurance. Some people may have bare bones insurance where their injury is maybe like 25, 50, 25. What that means is $25,000 per person, $50,000 total for the vehicle. Well, if you get into a serious accident, then and your insurance runs out, then you would be personally liable. Also, they could come after the brokerage and even me as a broker. I mean, everybody gets pulled into it. So in all honesty, I'd prefer you guys to caravan, meet at a house, and then follow each other to the other places, because if they get into a car accident while they're driving, then it's on them. But if you're the one who has to drive, make sure you have at least 100, 300, 100 insurance, so that if something seriously does happen and they get a really bad injury, then you're going to be more covered. And it's not that much of a difference in premium on insurance to beef up that coverage, and it's worth the protection. Whenever you're doing showings, I always like to bring an MLS printout for each of the properties that you're going to be showing. And even I'll provide that to the clients after we're done. Like, hey, here's the printouts for each one of these. And it's up to you if you want to provide them the full agent profile or just a customer brief. A customer brief is what would be the minimum. And the reason why you want to have that is because inevitably, whenever you're showing a house, the client's going to be like, what year was this built? What was the square footage? You know, are there any HOAs? How much is the HOA fee? They're going to have varying questions that are going to be about this house. And if you didn't memorize every single property that you're about to show them, then you're going to be in trouble. So just have that printout so that you can have the answers that they're looking for. When conducting a showing, don't ever speculate on the value of the home until you've seen a CMA. And what I mean by this is they may be like, do you think this is listed appropriately? Do you think this is overpriced or underpriced? They'll ask you questions like this. And it's better to just say, you know what, I haven't run a CMA on this property yet. Let me do that whenever we get done, and then I'll be able to get you that answer. So that is basically you telling them, let me go verify. Let me go make sure I give you a right answer. So there's nothing wrong with you telling them that you're going to go make sure, because they need the correct answers. If you end up telling them, oh, this is way overpriced, and then you come back and you run some CMAs and find out that it's not, then that will throw a wrench in your negotiations with that transaction, because your clients are going to run off of what you told them originally. They're trusting the information that's coming from you. So make sure that it is accurate. Don't talk in the properties with clients about decisions. Sellers could always be watching or listening via camera. This is the day and age of Wi-Fi cameras. They're very cheap. You can get them for $20 on Amazon and pop it up and just plug it in and link it within a few minutes, and you can see and hear everything that's going on in the living room, which is usually tied in with the kitchen and the dining room. So sitting at the dining room table saying, okay, I know you guys love this house. How much are you wanting to offer? How much are you willing to spend? You know, all of this information being shared with the sellers is really hard on negotiations. You do not want this to happen. So if you have some showings, tell them to begin with, say, hey, you guys just, level out your enthusiasm. If this house is if it's the one, don't go in there screaming at the top of your lungs like, honey, we have to have this house. It doesn't help your situation later. So reserve all conversations for later. You can certainly ask questions about the property, but if we're going to have any discussions about offers or what to do going forward, we should do that at another location, not inside of the house. Also, whenever you're setting up appointments for showings, usually you want to call the agent first. This is just to, one, verify to see if there's any contracts already on it. Sometimes the agent hasn't updated the MLS just yet, and you may find out that they've already had a contract submitted and they're about to accept it. So setting up the showing will be pointless at that point. So always call the agent, see what kind of information you can garner from them. And then if they say, we don't have we don't have anything going on, you're welcome to schedule some showings. Then you want to log into the showing service, whether it's Showing Time or Broker Bay or whatever there is in that market, and schedule the showing through them. Now, there are some properties you would be able to see this on the MLS report where the showing is not through a showing service. It might be contacting a specific phone number or texting a number, or they have varying ways that they can set that up. So just check with the MLS to make sure. Most of them, though, are going to use some type of showing service. Okay, so determining the value. First, I'm going to kind of hit the top points here, and then I'm actually going to pull up the MLS and run a quick CMA just to show you how, the steps and how to put it together. First of all, whenever you're determining a value, we are not appraisers. So you have to be careful how you present value to your clients. We're doing is providing what the association calls as a broker opinion. That's the name that they've given it. So we're giving it an opinion of value, not an actual valuation. The CMA will help the clients understand as to what has sold in the neighborhood. So what you need to do is try to compare apples to apples. This is done through like narrowing to just the neighborhood, if you can. The reason why you want to do that is you may have a neighborhood that was built in the 50s or the 80s, and it's directly across the street from a neighborhood that was built in the early 2000s. And there is a very big difference in the homes whenever you go from neighborhood to neighborhood usually. So you can't really compare the two. If you just drop a pin on a map and say 1 mile radius, you're going to get all kinds of different properties where you're comparing apples to oranges and watermelons, and it doesn't work. So you really need to try to isolate the neighborhood and narrow the square footage range to plus or minus 500 square feet, meaning if you've got a 2,000 square foot apartment, you can go plus or minus 500. So 1,500 to 2,500 around about. It's not an exact science. You could have a property that's 2,600 square feet compared to your 20,023. Don't rule it out if it's a similar bedroom bathroom configuration. If it's another 4-2 and maybe they just have a large game room or something like that, you don't want to rule it out completely, especially if you're having difficulties finding other properties to use as a comparable. You can use up to the last 360 days to determine. Now, mind you, we just went through a huge market swing over the last 8 months. And this time last year, people were still way overpaying for houses. And there are actually still pockets of areas and price ranges. So homes that are still in the 200s and 300s are still heavily contested. You could be in a multiple offer situation still. But with the rising interest rates, the markets have began to cool off to where the higher end homes aren't selling quite as fast. They're taking 60, 90 days, which is more of the norm as it used to be before. But so whenever you pull a comp that is maybe a year ago, you're not going to have a genuine comparison of price value just because that was whenever the market was really prime versus now, which has started to cool down. Use sold homes, not pending or active. Now, pending or active, what that does is it'll tell you what the competition is, if there is competition on this particular home. So if you have 8 homes in the neighborhood that are all for sale, then okay, they are not going to be selling as fast. That means the inventory is going up, which means demand's going to be dropping down or has already, and that's why there's an increased amount of inventory there. But you want to use the sold homes because a home actually, the frequency of which they sell for exactly what they were listed for is not as much as you would think. Most of the time, there's some type of negotiation either before the contract or even in the midst of while they're under contract. There may be repairs or negotiations that come from that adjust the price. And so it'll be a different amount than what it was originally listed at. And that amount is what you're going to use for making the comp calculation. And I'll show you all that here in just a second. So let me go ahead and pull up Netris here. And this is the North Texas Real Estate Information System. And this is just for Dallas-Fort Worth metro area. They use what's called Matrix. Houston also uses Matrix, and Austin also uses Matrix. So even if you're in those markets, this should be fairly similar. The general idea, if you're using a different MLS, is still the same. But this should at least give you a good guide on how to run a quick CMA. So we're going to do a regular search, just like we're looking for a home. Closed is what it's called in DFW. I usually drop 190 here just to do the last 6 months. And then I pull up the map. Now the property that I'm going to do is, wow, it just went blank. I think it's 35. Yeah, 3513 Gatewood. Okay. So we could pull it up on like realtor.com or Zillow or one of these. And usually they'll give you like an estimated value. This isn't, it's off market. It gives you the size. So it's a 4.2. The square footage actually is not accurate, but it's 1199 square feet. But I own this property and we converted, the people before us converted the garage into a bedroom. So we have these details. Now we can go back to this. And what we want to do is find the neighborhood on the MLS. It's Shiloh. There it is. Here we go. Okay. Now it's a little harder to tell right here, but usually you can kind of see the outline of the neighborhoods. So we want to use this polygon. And these homes are a little different than these homes. And we're just going to isolate this neighborhood. Okay. And now we're just going to go to the result. There's nothing sold in the last 6 months. That's kind of odd. Let's see in the last year. Here we go. So there were 2 that were sold in the last year. Now you have, this one's a 4.2, this one's a 3.2, but these have 2-car garages. So they're not a true comparison, but we can get pretty close. So we'll select both of them. And then there's the Cloud CMA, there's the Quick CMA, and then there's actually another CMA. So there's 3 different ways that you can run a CMA. And the easiest one, and the one that I generally use, is right here, because this just spits out a spreadsheet on a PDF very quickly. The others are going to ask you all of these other questions related to the property, and they're going to want you to try to set up comparisons. Like, for instance, how these have garages and the one that I have does not have a garage. But here we got, this is the price per foot that it was sold for, is $217. That's the average. $231 was max. Minimum was $202. So there were two of them, and that's what they, so that you have the list price and then the sold price. You can see that both of them sold at less than the value, and they sat on the market. That one sat on the market a month. That one sat on for a couple of weeks. So if we were to just take this one, let's just say this house isn't all that, maybe it needs a little bit of help. So we can decide, okay, we can either apply, if it's the, fully dressed up, it's a perfect house, everything, then you would want to take the highest price per foot and then apply that to the square footage. Or if it needs some help, maybe it's worse than the worst one on this list. And the way that you would do that is by taking a look at the pictures. So this one has nice flooring, pretty clean, updated. So that would be top of market. And then this one probably isn't as updated. It has carpet. Yeah, that's a dated kitchen. Hasn't been updated at all. And so that's why that one was priced so much less. Now we take this 202.44. I'll pull up a calculator. And this one, it says the square footage is 1199. So 202.44 times 1199. So 242,725. That would be the bottom of the market value. And then if we were to apply the top one, which was 231, top of market value would be like 276. Okay.
Hey, this is Jeremiah, not Brooke.
What's up?
I have a question. I've been noticing when I'm running CMAs that the really high square footage homes are going for much less per square foot than the smaller square footage homes.
Yeah.
Is that pretty normal?
Yep. So if you think of it this way, in a neighborhood, you've got small homes and then you have large homes. And there's a median kind of price range. And so the smaller homes are going to be lifted by the larger home values, and the larger homes will be decreased by the smaller home values, because the 3-bed 2-bath may be only going for 350,000, but there may be a 5-bed 4-bath in the same neighborhood that's 2,000 square foot bigger, that's going for 450, because they're going to stay within a particular range. Like, you won't have a true comparison. That's why you want to make sure that you narrow the square footage within 500 square feet, because if you go too big, it could actually present a lower value than you would want for the property.
Yeah. And then also the pools, I noticed, really aren't raising the value of the home by much at all.
Oh, no, the pool is the worst investment that you can make on a home, and they make that pretty widely known, but that doesn't stop people from spending that money. Right now, the average pool costs over $100,000 to install. And out of that money, you might get 10 to 20% back. But that will not stop the people from thinking that because they spent $100,000 that they should get $100,000 back. So that's just a forewarning. Okay.
Gotcha. Cool. Thanks.
Okay. So that CMA is something that you can provide to your clients, and you can send it to them to say, hey, these are the comps that I found in the area. They sold in May of last year, and these are the price per foot. I would say the range is between this, and yours will fall somewhere near the bottom or near the top, depending on the condition of the home and if it's been updated or not. It's very simple. That's the easiest way to do it. That's what I would recommend. Okay, so making an offer. First of all, you want to provide a CMA to your clients before submitting an offer. This is just going to help them make an educated decision on what to offer to a home. Now, if the home is under multiple offers, you still want to do it anyways, because they need to be aware of what kind of equity they're giving away to the seller if they're deciding to go in over ask. Also, you want to make sure that you have a current pre-qualification letter before you submit the offer. Honestly, I won't even show homes unless if the client's gone out and got a pre-qualification letter and sent it to me, because there's a lot of people that they have no consideration for your time, and they will go and look at properties till, you know, they're to their heart's content, and then come back later whenever you're ready to submit an offer and be like, oh, actually, I checked with my lender and I'm still not able to qualify just yet. I need to wait another year. You just wasted all of that time, whenever it could have been averted by just asking for a pre-qualification letter. And that's the type of hurdle that you want to have in place just to save your time whenever you're doing that. The pre-qual letter that goes with the offer is basically your proof of funds. Not everybody's going to be using like third-party financing. They may be using cash or something like that, in which case you would just need to get a bank statement or some type of statement that shows that the funds are there to make that offer look more serious. The buyer's agent is the one who's responsible for drawing up the initial contracts and addendums. So you would be the one, if you are representing the buyer, that would need to do that. And there are tools that I'll talk about here in a little bit that you can use to put those together and send them out for signatures. Counter offers, though, however, can be made in text or email. Once you put together the contract and send it over, and they can send back an email crossing through stuff if you want, but there could be some back and forth, and there's no sense in continuing to cross through or making all new contracts. They already know you're serious. You just email back saying, the terms that they're wanting to make a counter offer to. And then once everybody's agreed, that's whenever you can update the contract and send it out for signatures. Negotiating. So your fiduciary responsibilities to your client, it is not to getting the deal done, and it's certainly not to the other side. And you could even have a client that may be making you feel like maybe they're not being fair, but your fiduciary responsibility is to your client. So you need to do what is their best interest. So if they want you to submit, certain offers that may be way too low or way too high, it's still, their decision. So what you can do is educate, and then if they decide to continue to do that anyways, then you've done your job. There's no room for emotion in this business. And the reason why I say that is because it's very easy to get caught up in stressful situations, especially if the other agent on the other side of it is being difficult. This happens more often than I care to mention. And you may have agents who are just being difficult to be difficult. The best thing that you can do is, go take a breather, step away until you can come back with a calm demeanor. Don't ever send an angry email or angry text or anything like that. If you need help with that, y'all can always reach out to me. I'm happy to review emails or texts in tense situations to kind of give you a non-biased opinion on how to approach these things. I am, not to toot my own horn, but I have been able to cool off a number of very difficult situations and prevent them from ending up in litigation or worse, at TREC. So if you have something that's becoming to be more difficult than you can handle, get help. get someone within the brokerage or contact me, and then we will help you get through that. You do have to submit every offer to your client unless they specifically say otherwise. So if your buyer says, this is my best and final, I'm not doing anything else, and the seller comes back with yet another counter offer, you have the choice to be able to go back to the seller and say, I'm sorry, but my client said that was their best and final. Or you could still notify your buyer and say, hey, they came back with another counter. Are you certain, is this what you want to do? But in the end, you want to make sure that you let the clients decide. We as agents can educate our clients so that they can make good decisions. And that's how we're going to be able to avoid buyer's remorse or litigation, is by giving them as much information as we can, preferably in writing, and letting the client decide, and then just doing what they're asking us to do. Because if we unilaterally make a decision for them, then we're on the hook if that doesn't go well. Good negotiations are the difference between a good realtor and a realtor that doesn't get called back. If you save your client, $50,000, $100,000, then they're going to love you and they're going to tell every one of their friends about you. But if they don't get the house and they never move in because y'all were not able to come to terms, that also falls on you. And after so many losses, they may just decide to go with another realtor, and then you won't be getting any referrals at that point. So these are the things that you need to consider anytime you're entering negotiations in a transaction. Be very thoughtful and careful about everything that you say and do. Read and reread your emails, text messages, to make sure that you are being very careful about everything that you're saying. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the tools of the buyer side. So there is Showing Time or Broker Bay. These are the showing services that are available. If you're not familiar with Broker Bay, if you log into Netris, it's right here. With MetroTex, they no longer use Showing Time. They just use Broker Bay. Houston still uses Showing Time. Most of the other markets still have it available. But I do think that they are in the process of going away. I'm not certain on that though. But you want to check the listing again to make sure that they are using it. You can schedule appointments. It depends on the market, but sometimes it's a monthly service for the showing service. Sometimes it's free for the buyer side and only costs money for the seller side. It just varies on the market that you're in. You would just need to contact that showing service to get set up with them. You want to make sure that you don't schedule your appointments more than a couple days out, just because you don't know what could happen. There may be something that comes up with your clients and you've just wasted your time scheduling all those appointments. So if your client says, hey, I'm going to start looking next Saturday, then you just say, okay, I'll check with you next Thursday. Make sure that's still the plan, and then we'll go ahead and schedule the appointments. You can re-verify with all the properties that they are still available, and you can re-verify with your client that they're still planning to get out that Saturday. You want to map out your showings just to be as efficient as possible. You don't want to frustrate your clients by driving back and forth all over the town, whenever you could have done it in a more efficient manner by just going basically in a row across town. The MLS. So like I've mentioned, Netris they have a matrix MLS. There's Paragon, which is used in several different markets. This is what's used to search for sales, leasing, acreage, land, farm and ranch. I mean, there's all different varieties of listings that are in there, even commercial. It's where you're going to go to produce your quick CMAs. And then My Listings is something you would use on the seller side whenever you're managing listings. And I'll talk about that more here in a little bit. The Supra. So most of the homes will have a blue iBox on them, and they may say Supra or Blue Box or something to that tone. The super key is something that you have to get through the Association of Realtors. You cannot get it outside of that. A membership is required. And the way that they have it set up is it's on your phone. It's an app on your phone. Once you're signed up with it, you can download the app, and then you can speak via Bluetooth to these blue boxes to unlock. And the way that they communicate is on the blue box, typically placed on the front door. You punch up on the bottom, which is where the key is located. That will activate the Bluetooth within the computer inside of that, and then your phone can communicate to it and then unlock it. The listing, like I said, will usually have Supra, or if it says combo, then it could have a combo box. ZipForm. So this is a contract management tool that's provided by the Texas Association of Realtors. This is free, and you can find this on texasrealestate.com. We'll go ahead and jump over there. You'll see ZipForm button right here. Now, everyone in Texas has access to ZipForm through the association. There are some markets where Transaction Desk is provided, and that's this one right here, which is, they call it Instanet here. Both of these have the same function. So you can draw up contracts and send them out for signature. You can access forms through both of these. And ZipForm, the reason why I primarily push this is because not every market has Transaction Desk. But in ZipForm, you would just create a new client. You select the type that it is. You can even use it for just digital signature. You would take... I thought I had a test one in here, but maybe not. You go to the documents, and then all forms. Texas Realtors is where most of your main promulgated forms are going to be located. There are other forms that are through different associations, but you can select all if you want to have access to just all of them. But if you're just looking for the main ones, Texas Realtors is what you're looking for. So you've got the 1 to 4 right here. Addendum subject to Mandatory Owners Association. Here's an amendment. Seller's disclosure notice. So whenever you select these documents, you'll notice that they've already got blanks where they need to. And then these promulgated forms that are already stored in the system, whenever you go to sign, it'll auto-populate where the signatures go after you enter in the client details. So you can fill this out. You can save it as a PDF. You can email it out. You can print it. There's a ton of different options that you can do. And then, of course, once it is completed, you can send it over to your client to e-sign it. From here, we're just creating the e-sign packet. So we're going to add new John Doe. Buyer 1. Save. See how it auto-populated that for you? And it does that for the whole document. Okay. Now, if you need to add other documents, we can add right here. Amendment, seller's disclosure. And then it'll still auto-populate those signatures. Then once you're ready, once you filled it out, you just set this and then you hit send, and it'll go to the client for their signature. It does send it consecutively, not at the same time. So if you have more than one signing participant, one will sign, and then after they complete, then the other one will sign. They will not see it until after they've completed that signature. I have not used Transaction Desk, but I am led to believe by the agents that use it that it is very similar. You can pull up promulgated forms, complete them, and send them out for signature, just like ZipForm. Okay, so you can also add PDFs. So for instance, if you are the buyer side and the seller's already uploaded the seller's disclosure, you would add that PDF to the transaction in the documents, and then you would have to manually add the signatures and initials to the locations that they need to be before sending it out for signatures. And then the documents are signed via digital ink, which can then go out to you after they've completed them. Okay, so that completes the buyer side. Now we're going to jump over to the listing side. The pinnacle of the listing side is the listing appointment. This is what is going to set the tone and expectation for your client. So preparation is key on your part. At this time, you're going to sit down with them, typically at the residence. You're going to discuss upgrades, repairs, estimated value, timeline, just to let them know what because they're going to be looking for answers. They want to know answers to all of their unknowns. And that's why preparation is so important. You want to provide your CPN and the IBS at this, the exclusive agency agreement, as well as the seller's disclosure, a blank one for them to complete. So it's really great to go ahead and come with a folder with the CMA and all of these documents all put together so that you're prepared. You want to go over the exclusions on 2B and C with the client. And what I'm talking about is right here. Improvements and accessories. Now, whenever I say you want to go over that, it's because there's a lot of misconceptions about what goes and what stays with the house, especially on the listing side. They may have spent thousands of dollars on curtains and customized curtains, and they're wanting to take those with them because their next home has 10-foot windows, whatever. The contract specifically states that let's see, where is it? Here it is. Window shades, draperies, and rods are considered an accessory, and they're supposed to stay with the house. Also, the swimming pool equipment and maintenance accessories. This is your cleaning equipment, the skimmer, all of that stuff is by default supposed to stay with the property. Things that are permanently installed or built-in items are typically what's supposed to stay. So like a range that's been installed into the house, a microwave that's been installed, these are permanent fixtures. What's not permanent is a wall-mounted TV. The TV is considered non-real property, and they can take that. You do not have to list that as an exception. However, the TV mount is considered a fixture to the house. So television antennas, mounts, and brackets for television and speakers, those are all supposed to stay with the house. So if they've got some fancy TV mount that they want to keep, then you need to add it to the exclusion list. You'll notice that it says the following improvements, accessories will be retained by the seller and removed prior to delivery of possession. So before they leave that house, they have to take it. Anything that's left over could be contended for. So these are things that you want to go through with your client at that listing appointment to see if there's anything in particular that they're wanting to keep. I had one client one time that she had spent like several $1,000s on this fancy dining room light fixture. And I had told her that I had gone over this list with her, and I was like, that is actually supposed to stay with the house. So if you're wanting to keep it, then I would recommend actually swapping it out even before the showings, because people may fall in love with that light fixture and get a bad taste in their mouth if they don't get the house with that, and you end up putting something in. Now, if a client does end up taking something that's on this list and it was not excluded, then it is on the client to replace it with something of equal value. So if this client of mine had taken this and we didn't disclose it as an exclusion, then she would have needed to come up with another several $1,000 light fixture to go in that kitchen, and the buyers would have had to approve it. Otherwise, you could end up in litigation, and it's just not worth the trouble. Okay, so again, don't put yourself in unsafe situations. You're going to be going to somebody's house, and if this is an internet lead and you don't know them or you don't know the area, and you drive up and this place looks really sketchy, like Michael Myers' house, don't go walking in. Just text them, say, I'm sorry, we're gonna have to reschedule. Let's schedule the listing appointment. Let's do it at the Starbucks over in this part of town or something like that. You know, whatever you feel more comfortable with is what you need to do. If you are getting some type of vibe that's saying get out of there, then listen to it, follow it, and don't stay there and just go in and wait for something to happen. This is the listing appointment is the first negotiation, and it's actually going to happen between you and the client. Most people don't consider this, but you are negotiating with the client as soon as you are going over what that list price should be. And I will tell you that most people in their minds, they think that place is the Taj Mahal. They've been pouring blood, sweat, and tears into that place for years. And as I mentioned before, they may have spent $100,000 on a pool just last summer, and they want to get all that money back. It just doesn't work like that. So bringing a CMA is very important to show what homes are selling for, what the price per foot range is, so that they can have a reasonable expectation. Now, that that argument is not worth having if it gets too difficult. So what I mean by that is if they're just adamant about overpricing it, then what you can do is say, look, I'm here for you. I will list it for whatever price you want to list it for. Please keep in mind that it's not what we say it's worth. It's what someone is willing to pay for it. So if we can find a buyer that's willing to pay this amount, then great. If not, if we put this on the market and it sits for 2-3 weeks and there's no showings, then we know that we've overpriced it and we need to make a quick adjustment. And you do want to discuss the risks. And what I mean by that is a home that sits on the market for, especially nowadays, if it sits more than 2-3 weeks, the offers are going to start going down. So getting full ask after 2-3 weeks is not likely anymore. And if it sits for, say, 60 days or 90 days, then you're going to get really reduced offers at that point. And another thing to keep in mind is the search engine aspect of the listing. What I mean by that is as soon as a property gets entered into the MLS and set to active, it's syndicated out to Realtor.com and all the other real estate websites that are syndicated with the MLS. And those listings will be populated at the top of search results because they're considered relevant new listings. And so whenever someone searches in that area, they're more likely to see it. Any home that's been on that market for a couple of months is not going to be at the top of the list. It may not even be on the first page. So the longer it sits, the less viewers you're going to have on the listing itself. These are things that you want to discuss with your client during the listing appointment if they're adamant about overpricing it. So you want to make sure that they understand that, hey, we can't just sit on this. with no showings. If we're getting showings, okay, we'll stick to it until we get some offers. If we're not getting any showing requests, then we've overpriced it and we need to make an adjustment quick in order to start getting showings in before we lose our viewability online. Okay. Showings. The showing side of the business for the listing appointment. You want to prepare your clients for the showings at the listing appointment. And what I mean by this is telling them to make sure that the house is clean, light, bright, airy, less family pictures. You know, the shades are all open, so there's lots of sunlight coming in. The fans are going, all the lights are on. Maybe there's some gentle jazz going in the background. They get some Glade plugins, make it smell like, you know, Macy's or something. I don't know, to where whenever somebody walks in, they can picture themselves in the home. They feel comfortable. If they walk into a home that smells like wet dog and there's pictures of kids everywhere and there's drawings all over the fridge, they're going to think they're walking through somebody else's home, and they're less likely to make an offer whenever they're uncomfortable like that. So you want to set it up to where it's almost like a room store versus someone else's home. And this is what you really need to impress upon them, because they're the ones who are going to be doing this. They're going to be the ones who are cleaning it and getting it ready for showings. And express to them that the showings are what's going to do the work. So your job as an agent is to make the best listing possible, to get people in there with great descriptions, good pictures, and good details. But if they show up and it's not what it is in the pictures and it smells bad or something like that, people will not buy it. I had this one house, looked immaculate on the pictures. It was wonderful. And we went walking into the house, and they had this closet right by the front door. And I guess these people wore a lot of sandals with no socks, no shoes, no anything like that. So as soon as we walked in, we were like, oh, that has kind of a funky feet smell. And then we opened up that door, because it's right. I mean, as soon as you walk into a showing, the first thing you do is you start opening doors that you're nearby because you want to see what's behind the doors. We opened up that door and almost got knocked over by the stench of the shoes that they were storing in there. It was like my high school football locker room. It was awful. And so we closed the door and we turned around and we left, and we did not even look at the rest of the house. And that kind of thing will kill it. And you need to give stories like this to your clients. Say, look, this can ruin the deal. You know, we can get people to show up all day long, but if it stinks or if it's not clean or if they feel uncomfortable, then we're not going to be able to sell it. Okay, so receiving an offer. First of all offers are good offers. Don't ever discourage another agent from submitting an offer. They may be calling you to say, hey, and Jeremiah, you may like this, but they may be calling you to say, hey, would y'all take, you know, so-and-so, will this work? You, as the agent for your client, it's your fiduciary responsibility to get offers to your client. A phone call or a text message is not an offer. It's not the same. So they need some kind of contract with proof of funds in order for that to be an offer. And even if that person calls and says, hey, we're going to offer this, and maybe it's way below, okay? And they're just fishing to see if you're willing to accept it, or your clients are, then your answer is just say, you know, I'm really not sure what they're willing to accept. In my opinion, all offers are good offers. So why don't y'all go ahead and put together a contract and send it over, and I'll get it in front of my clients. So you're doing your job at that point, because sometimes all it takes is just getting the two parties to the negotiating table. In multiple offer situations, you're going to be more towards just getting as many offers as possible. So again, you don't want to discourage anybody. You want to give them time and just say, this is the time that we're going to be accepting offers. And then we'll be making a decision after that point. So at no time should you be like, no, that won't work, because that could be an offer that comes across that has everything else just right that the client may consider over something else. And that's why you want to just get as many as you can in front of your client. Again, you must submit every offer to your client. Don't give time to people that are not serious. I've had times where I get a text message and someone's, saying, hey, would your client take this and this? And I just say, go ahead and submit an offer and I'll see what I can do. And because I will tell a client, hey, I got a text message, they're interested in this. And the client says, oh yeah, I'll take that. And I'll go back and I'll text them back, and then nothing. And then your client's looking at you like, what did you do? What did you do wrong? Why did you say I have an offer and now I don't have an offer? So anything that goes wrong is your fault. So don't even give time to those people. Just say, you know what, go ahead and submit an offer. I'll get it in front of my client. We'll see what we can do. Because it just goes poorly if you do it the other way. Review offers before submitting to your client. And what I mean by that is, as real estate agents, we're not authorized to explain contracts or interpret any of those sections for them. That's considered practicing law without a license. But what you can do is break down the brass tacks of the contract, saying this is the total offer. This is they're wanting you to pay for title insurance. They're wanting a $500 residential service contract, and they're wanting $5,000 in seller concessions, which will make the net offer this amount. You can do that. There's nothing wrong with that whenever you submit that with the offer. Still encourage your clients to read through the contract. Don't ever have them just fully relying on you. And just remind them anytime they do something like that, say, look, I'm not an attorney. I would encourage you to read this so you don't have any questions later on. Okay, so the tools for the listing side, centralized showing services. I would encourage you to use this anytime you're doing a listing, because it's going to save you so much time. They will usually text the clients directly and get approvals from them. So you're not having to receive a text the client, wait for the answer, receive the text from them, then text back the agent. It's kind of a pain in the butt to do all that. I've done it. It's not fun. This service is worth $40-$50 if you're able to save all that time in dealing with all the showing requests. On top of that, they will compile data, how many showings were there last week, last month, and it gives you a lot of information that you can use to provide to your client to show that you were doing the work. Let's see, you want to have your contact info on there in case if they have any questions. Let's see. Next is the MLS. Whenever you're inputting a listing, more information is better. This stems to the search engine aspect of the business. These search engines work on keywords specifically. They're computers. They can't, look at pictures. They can't, well, software is getting there, but I'm just saying, like, they can't interpret what's at that property just by looking at pictures. You need to tell them what all is there. So checking every box that's applicable is good. Filling in the description. If it says you have 720 characters, you should use 720 characters as best you can. I mean, at least, above 700 to where you're filling it in as much as possible. And those descriptions need to be things that were not checked, but are aspects of the home. Maybe it's, right across the street from a bowling alley, or I don't know, a white kitchen. They don't have that as a selection. Newly renovated white kitchen, that is kind of a hot thing right now. You want to use descriptive things about the property that are not check boxes already. And then good photos are what's going to sell the property. Now, I've used services like Home Snappers before. There's other services nowadays that are all pretty comparable in price, usually around $120, and you'll get about 15 to 20 photos. And these are wide angle. They'll brighten them up. They'll make them look great. If you were to take a photo, or your clients take photos of the property, say with their cell phone, and they're more narrow, you're not able to see as much of the room, and maybe they're darker, it's just not going to give the same appearance as a professionally done photo. It's worth the extra $100 to make that impression on the listing itself. Make sure it's syndicated, make sure it's going out to realtor.com and all of those sites. I check yes on everything. I want it to have as many comments and keywords attached to it as possible, because it's going to make it more searchable. Include the seller's disclosure. You want to add this to the listing already signed and completed by your clients. And the reason why you do that is because on the contract, it actually states here, let's go. Seller's disclosure notice. So if they check right here, the buyer has received the notice, there is no back out. Right here, the buyer has not received the notice. Within, doesn't matter, 3 days, 7 days, 20 days, doesn't matter, of this contract, the buyer is then given a right to terminate the contract for any reason within 7 days after they receive the notice. That means your client, or whoever the seller is giving away a free option period at that point. So I encourage all my agents to make sure that they don't sign a contract. Don't have your clients sign a contract where this box is checked, because that's just another way for the buyers to be able to back out free and get all their earnest money back. It's not okay. You may even get an offer where they didn't put an amount on the option. I've done this before, where they haven't provided the seller's disclosure. So I just leave the option fee blank. I leave the termination option blank, because I'm getting a free one through the seller's disclosure. So that could be a tool that you use to be able to make an offer look more appealing, because there's no option period in there. But why would you make your clients pay $200 for an option period if the sellers are willing to give it away for free? So that is an important note about the seller's disclosure. The My Listings is where you're going to go to edit it. If you need to terminate a listing, you need to get the signed termination agreement from your client, send it to me, and then I'll be able to terminate it in the MLS. Supra, you will need to rent a Supra key from the association in order to have access to the blue box. This is on your phone again. The listing will need to say Supra blue box, and it needs to be placed on the front door or someplace nearby. Maybe the front door doesn't have something that you can latch onto. You can attach it to a wrought iron fence or a gas meter or something that's not easily broken or removed. You don't want it to be stolen. Those things are expensive to replace, and they also include your client's keys, which means they would probably want you to rekey the whole house if that got stolen. So it's better to just attach it to something that's not easily removed. I do not allow combo boxes on occupied homes. If someone is living there, don't stick a combo box on it. Those things are easily broken into, and we don't want to put our clients at risk. Okay, so the contracts. The main contracts are the 1-to-4 residential resale contract. There's other contracts, all of them All of these promulgated forms and then some are available in the agent portal. They're filled out in sample form in the classroom. There are other contracts. There's new home. There's condominium for new construction. There's condominium for resale. So all these contracts are applicable to the type of property that you are selling. Make sure you have the right one. Third-party financing addendum is for if there is going to be a loan. They have conventional FHA, VA, and a bunch of other less likely to be used ones. We have those filled out in sample form as well. The Mandatory Owners Association, that addendum is used whenever there is an HOA in the community. The termination due to lender appraisal, this one is a trickier document. And please note that if you have an offer at, say, $350,000, you do not use the termination due to lender appraisal for a $350,000 appraisal. The third-party finance addendum already has full offer appraisal requirement built into it in the property condition section. I think it's 2B. So you do not want to use this addendum unless if your clients are going over the ask, or maybe they're wanting a partial appraisal. Maybe they're wanting to say they're offering 350, but they're saying as long as it appraises for 325, we'll still buy it. Your clients will be on the hook for the difference, not 25,000, but whatever the difference is in the appraisal and their offer price at that point. That's what you would use the lender appraisal addendum for. There's also other addendums. On-site sewer, lead-based paint. Lead-based paint is if a property was built prior to 1978. The mud or PID docs, these are usually provided by the seller or the county. They do not have like a mud addendum that is promulgated. They have those that are created by the county and then provided at the sale of the home. The buyer or seller temporary residential lease. Now, I will say with this, I try to encourage people to steer away from these. Most real estate agents default back to these, but there are a whole different set of governing laws over tenant landlord relationships than over buyer seller relationships. And as soon as that person becomes a tenant and your client becomes a landlord, if that person, say, decides not to buy the house, maybe their home didn't work out, or what, something happened, they lost their job, whatever, they may be like, I have nowhere to go, I have to stay here. Your client would actually have to file an eviction. And I'm sure y'all are aware, during COVID, they halted all evictions. So there were people able to squat in homes for a very long period of time without ever paying. And your clients were still on the hook for mortgage, insurance, all of that in a home that they weren't even living in. So try to steer away as best you can. If you have to do it, then minimize it. Do it for 3 days and make sure that there is a holdover amount, at least double what the rent is, so that there is some type of ramification on that person if they decide to squat in the home. Okay. Under contract. So did you set an option period? 7 days is the typical, 10 days if you can, 5 days should be the minimum. This is what you're going to use for the inspection and repair requests. The option period is not a requirement, but it does, make that offer stronger without it. So if you have a client who's really wanting to make a strong offer, ask them, say, are you willing to take this property as is with no repair requests? And if they say, sure, then you can do that, but just make sure that is in writing from them. You don't want that to come back on you later on. Get the fully executed contract, earnest money check, option check to the title company as soon as possible. So they require it to be delivered within 3 days. Now, if you went under contract, say on Wednesday, and that third day falls on Saturday, and title companies aren't always open on Saturday, that actually gets extended to the following business day. So that Monday. If it's a weekend that has a holiday on, say, a Monday, then it would extend to that Tuesday. So it's not a hard 3 days, but still you want to try to encourage your clients to get the money over to the title company as soon as possible, and then work with the title on getting the receipts from them. All right. Important. Stay on top of your client, title, inspector, lender during this process. You become a micromanager of sorts. It is important that you do this, because if you're wanting the transaction to go smoothly, it's very easy for people to overlook or mistakenly not do something. And if you weren't checking on it, as I said before, you're the easiest person to blame. If something doesn't go right, then most likely in your client's eyes, it's your fault. So do your best to manage it. I do have a under contract residential checklist that will go over everything that you need to be aware of. And I would encourage you to check off each item, and hang on one second, as you're going through it, until you feel comfortable enough to know what you need to do. So those, you may check with title to see if you're clear to close, and they may say, hey, we're still waiting on instructions from lender. You call the lender to say, even if you're on the seller side, call the lender, say, what are we waiting on? Is there anything that we can do to help out? Check with the other agent saying, hey, I spoke with the lender. They said they're still waiting on some documents from your clients. Are y'all going to be able to close on time? If you find these details out sooner rather than later, you can start working on getting amendments to extend the closing date, or varying degrees to make sure that the deal gets done without any risk to the clients. All right. Showings of the property while it's under contract. After you go into contract, inevitably there'll be at least one showing where the clients want to bring family members or friends or somebody out there to take a look at the house that they just went under contract with. And then you may have some clients that say, we're wanting to do some repairs. Is it okay if we have some contractors go out there and take a look? Don't just say yes to this, because the reason why is because I've had clients before send a dozen contractors out all at different times, and my clients got incredibly frustrated and angry. So what's better is you say, okay, if we're going to do something like that, let's set up a window in which you can have all these contractors come during this window. My clients will, they'll leave, and you can have 3 hours that you can be there while all these different vendors show up to give you bids or whatever. So try to minimize it to just one showing, one window, and that way it's not as much of an impact on the sellers. The sellers are still trying to move and prepare to get moved. So set the expectation, not only for the sellers, but also the buyers, that they understand that. Okay. Any changes or terms to an executed contract, addendum, amendment, anything, it needs to be done through another amendment. So once anything's been fully executed, don't go back and mark through something and make a change on it. That is how you can end up voiding a contract and having severe issues that come from that. Instead, that's why they have an amendment number 1, amendment number 2, amendment number 3, amendment number 4, because you may have amendment number 1 that deals with some repairs, and then you may have amendment number 2 that extends the closing date. So you want to use different forms for each one of those and make sure that they are not modified after they've been fully executed. And then make sure your clients comply with all the terms of the contract. So what I mean by this is, say they agree to do some repairs, fix a GFCI outlet in the kitchen, or have the AC tuned up, whatever it may be. The contract states very specifically that if it is required to have a trade license to do that trade, then a trade licensed person must do it. So that means no DIY handyman work. If they need to fix a GFCI, they have to call an electrician, have an electrician come out and fix that GFCI. They can't just do it themselves. Same with HVAC, same with plumbing. Those kind of things need to be done by licensed technicians. And then after it's completed, get copies of invoices, receipts, pictures of completed projects, send over proof. Be active in that side of it as the agent, because you want to have documented proof that the repairs were done so that there's no backlash later on. Maybe the AC didn't work and they come back and say, you never fixed it. Even though y'all did pay to have it fixed and it's just broken again. Well, if you have proof that you did in fact have it fixed and showed that it was working, then you are out of it. You're in the clear and they're having to deal with it themselves. Okay. Here's a brief copy of the residential contract checklist. It kind of breaks down in the days what you need to be considering, making sure it's fully executed, money's delivered within 3 days, receipts are collected, provide T47. Days 2 through 3 are, making sure the inspection is done and going through the inspection with the client. Does the residence have septic? Does there need to be a septic inspection done? HOA docs need to be ordered. 7 to 10 option period, is it coming to an end? It ends at 5 p.m. on whatever day is stipulated. Please note that the commencement date of the contract is day 0. That means that day 1 isn't until the following day. And then on, say, day 7 at 5 p.m. is whenever that option period would be ended. If y'all have not come to terms on repairs, then you need to ask your clients a serious, are you willing to walk away if y'all don't come to terms? Should we go ahead and have a buyer termination for the option signed and ready to go if we can't come to terms before the end of the option? So be prepared, have the documents queued up and ready to be sent before that deadline, because once you go past that deadline, that option period is no longer valid. Third-party financing addendum should have 21 days for approval for a conventional, 30 days for VA or FHA. If it's a number that is below that for approval, then you need to check with the lender personally. Don't just ask your client. Call the lender, say, hey, they're saying you can get them approved in 14 days. Is that right? Is it okay to put 14 days on this third-party financing addendum? Because I don't want to put them in a bad spot. Because once that has passed, if they get denied for the loan and they're past that deadline, they cannot use that as an excuse not to buy the house. So, these are things that you need to be considering as you're going through this checklist, and each day set reminders on your phone, on your email, whatever you got to do to stay on top of each one of these items. After the option period is completed, you want to make sure that the appraisal is ordered, because sometimes it can take 2-3 weeks for an appraisal to get done and completed and sent back to underwriting, and then they still have to review it. 3 to 5 days prior to close, you need to start looking at, are you going to be able to close on time? Has the closing disclosures been sent out by the lender? Because there is a state law that the client must have received a closing disclosure at least 72 hours prior to closing. If that hasn't been sent out, then you need to start working on an amendment to extend the closing date. So check with the title, see if everything's on track to close on time. 1 day prior to close, do a final walkthrough. There should be a final walkthrough with the buyer. And if there's any repairs that haven't been completed, then they could be drawn up. They could be talked about, and even closing could be delayed at that point. Let's see. And then Closing day. I encourage all of my agents to go to the closing with the client. No, it's not required, but inevitably there are questions. And if you're there, it's like a warm blanket for them. It helps them feel more assured that a professional is there to comfort them and help them in a situation where they don't know who the title company is, but they know you. And so you can be there to be their advocate if necessary. All right. So be mindful of surroundings and safeties. Always be mindful of your words. Misleading is a leading cause of lawsuits. And do not be afraid to ask for help. I am here. Every one of y'all should have my cell phone number, and you can always text or call. Whenever you're putting together your first contract, send them over to me to review, and I'll provide feedback so that your clients will never be the wiser. Okay, I'll go ahead and open it up for any questions that y'all may have.
My first question is about just wanted to clarify with the showing time versus the broker bay. So you said if we're in MetroTex, we should be using broker bay now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that makes
If you're not familiar with the app that's on Matrix, you can always call them direct to schedule showings as well.
okay, cool. I think I've used them like once before. I had another one, but it would probably come back to me.
Okay, that's fine. Anything else? No. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and shut this off.